пожаловать на канал о жизни и иммиграции в Ирландии. Меня зовут Анжелика.
So hello everybody, as Angelica said, my name is Mary Grennan. I'm the Director of International House Galway. So we are a language and teacher training and exam preparation centre based in Galway on the west coast of Ireland. So my own background, I think Angelica has told you a little bit about my background, that I have a background in languages and in teaching. Exam preparation, teaching, examining, teacher training, and inspecting. My interest in IELTS began when I was working as academic director of International House Dublin. And there we started offering IELTS to people from all over the world, people who wanted to go to a university in an English-speaking country, or to go to a university where the subjects were taught through English. So we worked with a lot of different people from many, many different countries. And we saw that IELTS, unlike other exams that maybe you know, TOEFL is another example, was very, very useful in helping to prepare people to study and to work in English. So I really noticed with IELTS how it really helped to change people's lives. Just one example I have is a doctor who was from Egypt, and he wanted to come and work in Galway with his family, and IELTS was the test that he needed in order to prove his level of English to work as a doctor in Ireland. And he took the exam in Cairo, he took the exam in Dubai, he took the IELTS in many different places. And finally, he took the exam, a course, and the IELTS exam with us. And he finally got the result he needed. And it changed his life completely. He came to Ireland with his family. He got a job in a hospital. And now he's working as a specialist in the north of Ireland, in Donegal, northwest of Ireland. So here we have some questions about IELTS. I'd like you to read the questions and see if you know the answers. In a moment, I will read you some information and see if you can get the correct answers. So, IELTS is the world's most popular English language test, with 1 million tests taken last year in over 1,200 test centres in 140 countries worldwide, including International House Galway. IELTS means the International English Language Testing System, and it provides a fair and accurate assessment of a candidate's language skills. And this is based on very well established standards, covering a lot of different levels, from non-user, 0, to expert user, 9. The test was developed by academics in Australia, who originally developed this test to help universities, professional bodies, and immigration authorities around the world to assess a person's level of English. Test questions, which are developed by leading testing specialists in different countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, and the US, these tests are all based on authentic English, which comes from around the world. IELTS belongs to a partnership of education and language experts, the British Council in the UK, IDP in Australia, and Cambridge Assessment English, again in the UK. But it's a test of international English. It incorporates British spelling, American English spelling, grammar and vocabulary, accents from all English-speaking countries, including Ireland. Leading universities, for example, where my daughter works in King's College in London, they accept IELTS because they say IELTS gives us a very good indication of entry-level English. Other tests are not as satisfactory at giving us this clear answer of a student's, an applicant's level. So the approach taken with IELTS tests is recognised by universities, immigration offices, and employers. And this approach is fair, reliable, and valid to people taking the test, whatever their nationality, cultural background, or needs. The international success of IELTS is due to the attention of the key test qualities that we look at to make a test worthwhile. They are validity, that it's valid, that it's reliable, and it's also practical to be able to administer. The topics that you study on IELTS courses are interesting and topical, contemporary, based on real-world events. This means that teachers can bring the outside world into our IELTS classes, and we use a range of authentic source materials adapted to the IELTS test format. So IELTS has a 9-band scale going from 0, non-user, to 9, expert user. So for example, my band is expert user 9, and many of our students' band is, for example, 5 or 6. Each band corresponds to a level in English, and all the band scores are reported, for example, in half bands. Like you can get an IELTS 7.5, an IELTS 5.5, an IELTS 6.5. You'll need a different IELTS band to do different things. For example, to study a master's in business at King's College, you'd need 6.5. That's from this year, 2020. To start a foundation course at a university, you probably need 5.0 or 5.5. As you can see, there's no pass or fail. Each band corresponds to a level, your level in English. So IELTS is accepted by universities, immigration officers, and employers around the world. And each of these bodies are looking for different types of English skills. So IELTS has 2 different formats. It has academic format and general training format. So IELTS academic tests have content and task types which are more suitable for studying, while IELTS general training have content and task types which are more suitable to the work environment. Both IELTS, academic IELTS and general training IELTS, have 4 different sections, assessing the 4 skills of listening, reading, writing, and speaking. IELTS candidates they receive different scores for each of the 4 sections. So you are given a different score for speaking, a different score for writing, a different score for reading, and a different score for listening. And the average of the 4 results provides the overall band result. So organizations which look at IELTS as proof of English language, they know that the score given for each section is a clear and fair reflection of the candidate's ability in that skill. And this is why the IELTS is so well recognized around the world. So recently, for example, we had a student who had, she needed to get IELTS 6 in writing and an overall 6. So she got higher results in different things, but she needed a 6 in writing. And this is what she achieved just there 2 weeks ago. And she is now preparing for a master's in the UK. So she needed an overall 6 for her master's degree, which is real estate. But different universities require different band scores. So we have some questions that people have been asking. Let me just check and see if I can answer them now. Somebody says, how long does the exam take? Is the exam taken in one day? Yes, the exam is taken in one day. So typically you will do the listening, followed by the reading, followed by the writing, followed by the speaking. Although sometimes you might do the speaking first. Okay. Somebody has asked for migration to the UK. Yes, IELTS is taken as it's used by many immigration authorities. For example, Australia and New Zealand accept IELTS for immigration purposes, and the UK also. Yeah. So Ekaterina has asked, should I study without failure if I want to pass an exam? Well, absolutely. You really need, for the IELTS, first of all, we recommend that you have IELTS level, English level upper intermediate or B2, because for any kind of course, you'll need at least IELTS 5.5 or 6. So we recommend that you get to a B2 level, an upper intermediate level, before you begin an exam preparation course. And this will help you to have more success in the IELTS, because an IELTS preparation course doesn't help you increase your level of English, but it helps you to gain the techniques that you need to pass the IELTS test. So that's why we recommend a minimum B2 level for IELTS, for the IELTS course.
Mary, there is a question in Russian, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Could you tell us, please, what's the difference between IELTS and CAE, and who should be taking IELTS instead of CAE?
Sure. CAE is a C1 level exam administered by Cambridge Assessment English. So CAE is not suitable if you want to emigrate, for example, to Australia, New Zealand, or the UK. It's not accepted. CAE would be a good level, a good exam for you to show an employer that your level of English is C1. It's a very, very good test. It's very reliable. Whereas IELTS is accepted by universities worldwide. So it really depends on what you need to do a test for. If you're doing a test to show an employer, if you're doing a test to show an immigration authority, or if you're doing a test to show a university what your level of English is. CAE is very, very valid as a test as well, but not for immigration, and few universities will accept it. IELTS is very well accepted by different universities because it's academic English, because it prepares you to read, write, speak, and listen to academic English. So Dennis had a question, does Ireland have a merit-based immigration system? Do you mean, Dennis, in relation to English? The answer is no. That's more in the UK. Somebody said earlier as well about UK, there is a special IELTS, which is, it's guaranteed secure for UK immigration purposes, which is the question, that separate version of IELTS. It's the same IELTS test, but it's just administered in different IELTS centres, for example, in our centre. There's another question here, which English level should be for pass IELTS academic exam? As I said, it really depends on the university. For example, we had a student, I think I told you about her just now, Laura, from Italy. Laura wanted to do a master's in real estate in England, and she needed 6 in writing, and then she needed a 6 overall. So you always take the 4 scores, listening, reading, speaking, and writing. You take the 4 scores, and then you divide it by 4 to get the overall result. So it really depends on the requirements of the individual university. I know, for example, medicine is 7.5 in most universities, while business is 6 overall in universities. But everybody requires a minimum of 6 in writing, because, of course, at a university, you're writing in English. So your writing level has to be good.
I just want to add, хочу добавить, что действительно все очень сильно зависит от университета, и в IELTS нет просто pass, то есть нельзя просто удовлетворительно сдать IELTS. Нужно смотреть, какие требования у конкретного университета или в данном случае, в некоторых случаях, иммиграционных служб. И уже в зависимости от того, какие там требования, рассчитывать. Многие университеты будут иметь отдельную вкладку на своем веб-сайте International Students, и там можно увидеть English Language Requirements. Под English Language Requirements будут списки тестов. Первое, списки тестов, которые они принимают, и сейчас в коронавирус появились новые тесты, это DET, IELTS Home Edition, something, что-то еще, TOEFL, тоже Home Edition. То есть сейчас появились некоторые разные, некоторые университеты их тоже туда добавили. Нужно смотреть, какой они хотят минимальный балл. Очень сильно зависит от программы, допустим, на медицину, логопедам, понятное дело, нужно иметь очень высокий балл. Некоторые точные науки очень высокий балл. Ну, допустим, другие университеты могут там на бизнес там 6 IELTS или 6,5 IELTS, что более часто. Но если вы хотите поступить не просто в университет, но хотите еще и стипендию получить, то как минимум нужно рассчитывать сдать IELTS на полбалла или балл выше, чем требуется при поступлении в университет. Вот это нужно понимать. Про разницу с TOEFL для устройства на работу в Европу и обучения там. Сейчас у Мэри спрошу. В целом большинство университетов могут также рассматривать TOEFL, в том числе в Европе, Ирландии, Великобритании, но они гораздо более привыкли рассматривать IELTS. И IELTS, все-таки гораздо больше ожидается, если вы будете учиться в Европе или Австралии, Новой Зеландии. Mary, there is a question about TOEFL. If you could tell us what's the difference between TOEFL and IELTS in relation to studying and working in Europe.
Sure. TOEFL used to be a very popular test. TOEFL is an American English test, and I never liked it because it was really, really boring to teach and really, really boring for the students. And it's all based on multiple choice. So you have a selection A, B, C, D, and you must select one correct answer. So this doesn't really help you develop your own English skills. So the reason why IELTS is more accepted today than TOEFL and more preferred today is because IELTS helps you to develop your academic reading and writing and speaking and listening skills. So this is why it's so popular around the world and has taken over from TOEFL, which isn't really taught anymore in schools. I haven't seen TOEFL being taught at an international house school maybe for about 15 years. It still is used in the US, but IELTS is becoming more and more popular as an alternative, as a better alternative to TOEFL.
I just got a question privately. How often can you take IELTS? And what should be the time limit? Like, can you take it every week, let's say? And can you tell us, like you mentioned, Laura from Italy who took the exam, what's the conditions in the lockdown like? So how do people take exam in lockdown? And is there an online version? And I know it is, but я знаю, что онлайн-версия экзамена существует, но не все университеты принимают этот экзамен. Вот в этом проблема. Not many universities accept that. So that's
no
a struggle.
IELTS online doesn't really exist. What does exist is they're giving you, so if you do the IELTS, it's not called an IELTS test, it's called something to do with level. It's not accepted at universities because it's unreliable, because people don't necessarily do it under exam conditions. They might have some help. So it's not really satisfactory. It's not really accepted. We are currently doing IELTS, even though now in Ireland we are in lockdown. IELTS exam services is considered an essential service. So we have IELTS tests running regularly. For example, we had a test last Saturday, and we're going to have another test we have IELTS tests every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on demand. And for example, Laura took her IELTS test with us 2 weeks ago, and she got her result within, it was about 4 days. So the turnaround is very, very fast with our IELTS test and result. So somebody was saying, can you take IELTS every week? I would never recommend that a candidate take an IELTS test every week. It's not a question of taking it until you get the right result. It's a question of being prepared. Laura only took the test once. She only needed to take the test once because she was prepared. She took a course. She first of all got to the level that she needed to get in English, and then she took an IELTS preparation course, and then she took the test. So it's not really recommended because it's so expensive. It's 200 pounds. So it's not really recommended that you repeat the IELTS. It's better to try and prepare for it and then just have to take it once.
I just want to add, there's this new test that's called Ielts Indicator.
Yes, this is the one that's not. This is the one that's not accepted. It gives you an indicator, but it doesn't. The universities are not accepting it, I believe.
Some universities do accept it because they don't see for many countries an option to take, a live test. So they do accept it, but very, very limited amount of universities, and only for 2020 intake.
Yes.
So for 2021, right now, they say they don't accept it. But I mean, we'll have to see how the circumstances change in the year.
It's not really reliable. That's why it's not being, it's limited acceptance. I know, for example, King's College are not accepting it. I know this because my daughter teaches there, and she told me that they're not accepting it, but probably they are accepting it in other places. So one person has a question about computer-based. Yes, so in Galway, we have the two options. You can take paper-based or computer-based. And Laura, for example, this is the person who just recently got her results. She took a computer-based test. She found the computer-based test more suitable for her because she types all the time for work. So she was faster typing than writing by hand. So this is possible. Yeah. So we're just having a look here at we talked a little bit earlier about the two different formats, depending on whether you want to study or whether you want to emigrate. For example, Laura took the IELTS academic because she wants to do a master's in real estate. My niece, Aoife, who is Irish, she emigrated to Australia and she took the IELTS general training. By the way, she didn't get a fantastic result in the reading. She found the reading very difficult because she hadn't prepared. She thought that it was just a matter of doing the test because she speaks English as a first language. But surprise, surprise, she didn't get the highest band, because she didn't prepare for it. So even if you're a native English speaker, you still need to prepare for the IELTS test because it's all about technique. And the reading test is the texts are quite dense, and there's a lot of information and a lot of you have to kind of sometimes guess what the writer is thinking. Slide number 6. This will give you an example, an indicator of where you are in terms of speaking. So this is what, when I'm examining for the speaking test, we have a number of different indicators of where a person's level is. And I think for a lot of people, they find the speaking test challenging because they're, of course, nervous and they don't know what kind of questions the examiner is going to give them. So you're tested on 4 different aspects of English, for example, fluency, your vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. So those are the 4 areas that we look for when we are examining. and we give a mark. A band will be a 5 or a 6 or a 7 in each of those 4 areas. So typically people will start an IELTS course at band 5 or band 5.5. So that's called modest user, or possibly 6. So between those 2. And then they will take the IELTS preparation course. So here you can see the different bands for listening and for reading. We don't look at bands below 5 because, as I said earlier, it's not really worthwhile to take an IELTS course unless you are minimum band 5. Okay? You can see what you're being examined on. For example, in the writing test, you're examined on 4 different areas. So first of all, did you actually achieve the task? Did you answer the question? Is your writing coherent? Does it link together very well? Is the grammar and vocabulary correct? Do you have a wide range? And as I said earlier with speaking, you're examined on the 4 different areas of fluency, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. So somebody was talking earlier about the CAE and the difference between CAE and IELTS. So the Cambridge C1, for example, somebody's mentioned earlier CAE, that's C1. So you can see C1, where C1 is positioned between roughly 6.5 upwards. It really, really depends on the different areas, though. It's difficult to compare them. This is a very rough estimate of how the IELTS bands and the C1 compare to each other. We have a look at the speaking test. So as you see, there are 3 parts. The first part is an introduction and some short questions. So the examiner might ask questions like, talk about your weekend, or talk about some movie that you saw. So they're very, very conversational, and to help the candidate become relaxed, and if possible, and to be able to start listening to the examiner and answering the questions, like a warm-up. And then you have an individual long term. This means that you're talking about a topic for 2 minutes. So the topic could be something like, describe the time that you helped somebody, for example. That's an example of a topic. So you're given 1 minute to prepare the topic, and then you have to speak about the topic for 2 minutes. And then the examiner might ask another question to you, just for a couple of seconds. And then that develops into part 3. Part 2 and part 3 are connected in terms of topics. So if part 2 was asking about a time that you helped someone, part 3 will continue the same topic about helping people in general. And this is not individual, it's 2-way. So the examiner will ask questions and the candidate will answer the questions. And these questions get more difficult as part 3 continues. So part 3 lasts for 4 to 5 minutes. The questions become more complicated as the examiner is trying to see what your band is finally going to be. The whole exam is recorded. So it's recorded from the moment you start the exam. And sometimes then the examiner, for example, me, we are also examined. So somebody examines my examining of the candidate. And this is why it's recorded for external assessment. And this is why the IELTS is so reliable and so trusted, because it's externally assessed as well. So even the examiner is going to be examined. So as you can imagine, there are some problems for students, for candidates taking the speaking test. I think probably the most important issue for people is nerves, and to try and become relaxed as possible doing a speaking test is not easy. And this is why preparation is key for the speaking test. A few weeks ago, I was examining 2 Irish women and they hadn't prepared. And as a result, the result could have been better, and it wasn't a great result because they hadn't prepared for it and they were very nervous. And I think it's really, really important to prepare. It's all in preparation. Prepare for the speaking test, as with all the other tests. Have I answered your questions? You said how many minutes should each answer last? Okay, so the whole exam, the whole speaking test lasts for between 11 and 14 minutes. And that's divided into part 1, part 2, and part 3. Angelica, you had some questions before that people had sent you before the webinar.
Yes, I did, but most of them were actually related to the writing part of the test. The one that relates to speaking was, you as an examiner, do you know what band the candidate got on each part? Or if you do speaking, you just do the speaking and that's it?
No, each part is assessed independently. There are 4 exams, so listening, reading, speaking, and writing. The listening and reading are, can you believe, they are assessed by a computer because it's only like ABCD. So anybody can correct it, even a computer. It's not easy to do, but it's easy to mark. The speaking and the writing are corrected by real people. The writing is corrected by, I have no idea who corrected Laura's writing test, for example, somebody in the UK maybe. And the speaking then was tested by the speaking examiner on the day. I wasn't her examiner because I know her, so we're not allowed to test people that we know. So each part is assessed by different people, and we have no idea about the results because remember, they're doing the writing, the reading, and the listening on the same day as the speaking. So the speaking is graded immediately, but the writing, reading, and listening have to be marked after the exam. So it's done later.
Perfect. There is another question from Alexandra. What if I use both British and American English words and pronunciation? Will it lower my points?
This is a very good question, Alexandra. You're supposed to focus on either UK or American English. And it's best to try and focus on one rather than mixing them. Now, today, more and more, you hear many Irish kids and they are using quite a lot of American words and quite a lot of American spelling. But officially in an exam like IELTS, you're supposed to keep to one. So whether it's going to be Irish English or it's going to be American English or it's going to be Australian English, it's best to stick to one type of English.
It does make sense.
It does, yeah.
Yes, the question about the writing is about, you kind of answered it because the person was worried that if they get, I don't know, 8 in reading, 8 in listening, and then they get 5 in writing, does the examiner then goes back to the writing and rechecks it? No, because that's a very typical type of result because a lot of people find the writing quite difficult. So it would only be checked if the candidate was not happy with the result and wanted to appeal the result, in which case they would go back and check it. But remember, everything is assessed by, like, for example, the speaking is assessed by an examiner and then it's assessed externally. So everything is assessed twice. So it's very, very fair. But if there is an issue and if a candidate feels that they did better, they can appeal their result. Mm-hmm. Do you have to pay for the appeal, by the way?
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
So
I can't remember how much it is, but I know for Cambridge, it's normally about £150.
Mm-hmm. So about this, yeah. Okay. The other question about writing was, is it true that the examiner reads only some parts of your writing, not everything? So just the introduction and the conclusion?
Not at all, because an introduction and a conclusion can be prepared before the test, because like a lot of writing, academic writing, is formulaic. it's done as a formula with the same type of linking words, a lot of the expressions. For example, in IELTS Part 1, you're describing something, you're describing a graph, or you're describing a chart. So a lot of the vocabulary can be used for lots of different types of writing assignments. And an examiner would never be able to assess a person's band by just looking at the introduction or the conclusion. They'd have to read the whole lot. And as you saw earlier, you're assessed on 4 different things. So that has to be throughout the whole essays in the plural.
Thank you. There is another question in the chat about academic rating. So what's the main difference between 7 and 8 bands?
Well, the main difference is the level, the amount of fluency, the amount of use of vocabulary. The higher the level of vocabulary, the higher the level of grammar. That's going to be the difference between a 7 and an 8. But for anybody thinking about studying, nobody needs an 8. For undergrad courses, for undergraduate courses, typically it's going to be 6.5. And for some courses, it might be 5.5. So you're never going to be asked for an 8 in writing for study purposes or for immigration purposes.
I know that some scholarships require higher grades. So some scholarship will require 7 and 8. And even if it does require 7, then the scholarship goes to the, whoever got the highest.
Okay.
But also some people just feel that like there are teachers who take IELTS because they want to be viewed as very highly intellectual and with high level of English. Okay. So they would, want to have 8 or 9 even on their own IELTS, so they can show to their students that, look, this is what I'm at, so I can take you there.
Sure.
In this aspect.
Sure. In that case, it would be the difference between, it would be preparing the English level first to get, if you wanted to get an IELTS 8 or 9. A 9 would be quite difficult to get in writing, but to get an IELTS 8 in writing, it would be about preparing a very good English course first at advanced proficiency level, and then taking an IELTS preparation course. Okay, so I've put together a few tips for different to help you prepare for the different tests. Here's a couple of tips for listening. So one of the tips that I think is great is to watch a news story on TV in English, and then find the same news story in Russian. So did you understand the news story in English correctly? Then go back to the English version and listen to it again. So watching a news story, for example, on CNN, and then watching the same news story on Russian TV, for example. Watching TV, Netflix is amazing for learning English. I use Netflix myself for learning Spanish with subtitles, subtitles in English if you can, and pause and listen again when you can't catch what they're saying. And then make predictions about what you think the next person will say. So typically a TV series, old favorite like Friends is a really good series to watch to help you, because many times you'll already know the episode in Russian, so you can watch it in English and then compare the two. And then podcasts, I think podcasts are amazing. I listen to a lot of podcasts in Spanish at the moment. Pause and listen again to short sections, to become more familiar with connected speech, and even to repeat what they're saying. We're talking about writing. So here's a couple of tips for writing. Looking at a newspaper article online or in paper, choose a paragraph, make notes on the content, and then try and rewrite it yourself without looking at the original one, and then going back and comparing it to the original one. So to see what the difference is between your level and the level of the newspaper. Writing a journal of your life, I think that's a really nice idea, to write about yourself in English. A friend of mine in Paris is learning English with me in a friendly way, and he's writing a journal about his life in lockdown. He's a photographer, and I'm correcting his English and commenting on the content, which I think is a lovely way to practice writing. Looking at different newspapers, so different types of, going from a cheaper, more tabloid newspaper to a better quality one. The style, the difference in the style. choosing an article and then finding the same article in Russian and comparing the style between the different types of newspapers. For reading, the next slide. We're actually starting a reading club next week at IH Galway. You're very welcome to join the reading club. We have lots and lots and lots and lots of books to share and to help, like over 100 books worth that you can use to help your reading skills and to help your language skills. Reading is an amazing way to learn English. So you choose a book which would be at your level from A2 to C1. Choosing a new story and reading it in English, and then finding the new story in Russian, going back to the English version and reading it again, and underlining information. So finding the key information in the text and underlining it. That'll help you to learn how to read, because as I said to you earlier, the texts in IELTS are really, really, really dense. So it's really important to catch the key information. Again, to help you with this, looking at a text that you've studied, identify the chunks, the bits of language, and dividing up the text into chunks that'll help you then to answer the question. You're lucky because we have a conversation club. You can join us every week for the conversation club, and this is free. Every Thursday we have a conversation club. So this Thursday evening, that's one way of doing it, practicing English, speaking with other people. Another thing to think about, a story from your life, make a few notes about it, because in the IELTS test, you're going to be asked about yourself. You're going to be asked about things from your life as well. So thinking about stories from your life and using your phone to record yourself and then analyze the recording. Or think about a story from your life and make a few notes using your phone to time yourself, because in part 2, you have to time yourself for 2 minutes. And 2 minutes is a very long time when you have to speak alone. People find that quite tricky. 2 activities: try and tell the story quickly and make the story longer, so adding more details. And this will help you then to prepare for part 2. So those are a couple of tips that I hope will be useful for you for IELTS. As I said to you earlier, you're very welcome to join our reading club to help you with reading preparation, and to join our conversation club to help you with speaking. So these activities are open to everybody from outside our school as well as inside.
Mary, can you just tell a bit about International House Galway and how you can help guys to prepare for IELTS? You mentioned conversation class and speaking class, which are free, which is amazing. But I know that you do have courses. And can you tell us how it's going now? Because we're all in lockdown. So
yes, well, we're very happy. We're very happy with our online lessons. We were always an online centre for teacher training, because we train teachers as well in Galway. We started teaching online back in March, and we're really, really happy with the results. Our students are attending live online lessons in the morning and in the afternoon. So our morning lessons might suit maybe your timetable better. They're from 9 o'clock Irish time to 12:30. And our afternoon classes are from 1:30 to 5, again, Irish time. And in our lessons, our students we follow a course book, but we also look at materials like authentic materials. Our students, we like to prepare as much as possible to help our students talk about their own lives, to include their own interests in the lessons as well. But we do know that the majority of students are preparing for some kind of an exam, and we include different exam techniques and different levels. And we focus on writing and presentation skills. Every Friday, our students have a test or an exam, and this might be a presentation or it might be a traditional test. So we use an ebook, we use Google Docs, we use Zoom as a platform, and we also have our own International House Galway platform, which gives extra practice, so about 15 to 20 hours extra practice per week, which teachers guide the students to take. And then typical course level will last 10 weeks. And after 10 weeks, you take a final test to change level. So 10 weeks would be the equivalent of 150 hours. And that would be typical number of hours that you need to go from level to level. For example, from B1 to B2 level, or from B2 level to C1 level. It's about 150 hours, depending on the student. So our feedback from students has been very positive, as I said, and students in general are finding the online lessons that they can concentrate more and that they get a lot of individual attention from teachers, which is very important. Our students are coming from all over the world, and we have a nice group of teachers. We have a small team. We're a boutique centre, and our teachers are very, very well qualified. Because we're a teacher training centre, we train our own teachers, and many of our teachers are also teacher trainers, so very high level and very, very experienced teachers. So master's level qualifications and many years of experience teaching.
There are two questions, one in relation to the school. So do you still offer teacher training courses right now?
Yes, we're currently running a teacher training course, and it's the CELTA, the Cambridge Assessment English Teacher Training Course, which is the most recognized teacher training course in the world. And Cambridge are, we've been running CELTA online since it started in 2012. So what's that, 8 years? But now the CELTA online is a completely online. So even the teaching practice part of the CELTA is live online, which means that you can take the CELTA course from your home. And actually, if anybody here is A2 level, we have teaching practice lessons on Saturdays, and we would love you to come. These lessons are free if you're A2 level. On Saturday afternoon, and again, Angelica can put the information if you like.
Thank you very much for joining, and I hope you have a very nice day.
And best of luck in your exam on Saturday, Alexandra.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.